Okay, everyone, welcome to the Birth Lounge, the first episode, and of course, I'm going to interview Ginny Peng. Now, my wife is here, and when I interview her, it's always going to be fun. There's going to be laughter. I think she's laughing at me, not with me. But there's questions I haven't asked her, questions about birth, and questions that I guess my intention for understanding and learning things is that birth teaches us so much about life. And having 1,200 plus births experience, me having one, then I think there's probably something we can tap into and learn from it. So thank you, Ginny, for being here as part of this first. So I want to start with that question. I would love to know, when you think about birth, what does birth teach us about life, about living? What does it teach us? What have you noticed, observed, and what does it teach us about life?
I think the first thing is really presence. It's when someone goes into labor and when you're attending a birth, it's no matter how much shit you had to deal with before, no matter how stressed you are, in that moment, you just got to put everything down and you just got to be present with the person. So I feel the first thing is really presence, right? And then what I really enjoy about birth, which is what it teaches me, is I love just being a witness to the unfolding of people, the intimacy, the challenges, the human spirit. So what I really enjoy being at a birth is being able to just support the unfolding of the human spirit. Whether, I need to be strong enough to be able to support their space and give them faith, or whether I need to take a step back because they have their own dance and I'm just there to hold the space for them. So it's something where you get to witness in a very short period of time, yet something so strong and so powerful that will have a lasting effect in their lives.
Define that human spirit. What is human spirit?
The human spirit of being able to unfold, of being able to let go and surrender. Because giving birth is a very vulnerable period, right? Come on, for a woman's body, everything is opening except the ears, the nostrils, the mouth, and breathing, the cervix, the anus, the vagina. You need to really feel safe and secure to be able to unfold and let your body do these things for you. So it's a really intimate moment, and for a lot of people, it's the difficulty or the challenge that they find is their ability to actually let go and to just flow, especially in the modern world where women have to do a lot more. There are a lot of self-expectations or society expectations of what we're able to do. So we're always more in the masculine mode, always more in the certain expectations that we set for ourselves. So you don't really get to see what we call the true flowing feminine. And I find giving birth like a meditation. You cannot live in the past and say oh my God, I've been in labor for 12 hours. You cannot live in the future and go oh my goodness, how much more time is this going to take? You really have to be right here, right now. You got to trust and you got to unfold and you've got to let go and let your body do the work for you. So it's extremely present. It is extremely... You see a person in a state where you don't get to see, or you hardly get to see in her lifetime. And it's not just the woman herself, but it's the dynamics with her birth partner, if any, kind of thing, or the people who are going to be there at the birth supporting her. So it's really special, and it's something where I strive to protect, to give the power back to the woman and her partner, so that this is something that they can walk away with feeling stronger, and just setting out the pace for their parenting journey.
You say one key word that I want to hone in on. You said protect. Protecting from what?
Well, it depends on where they choose to birth, right? It depends on what is it they're wanting and whether they're going into an environment that actually supports what they want. And it's just the simple thing when maybe protect is a strong word, maybe is the correct word. It really depends on what the environment calls for. So if I'm in a hospital setting, then yes, there's usually a lot of protecting. And how much protecting there is will be dependent on the persona of the woman the dynamics between her and her partner, and the dynamics of the team that we get that day, the team of nurses and people who are on call kind of thing. And at the end of the day, it's what you're protecting is her integrity, her preferences for what she's asking for. So and how her integrity plays out or how it's being challenged would be, there's so many variety, but it would be dependent on how everything actually unfolds. When they give birth in a safer setting, where they're choosing a home birth or they choose to birth with us at our birthing sanctuary, right? Then there's a lot less protecting, but there's still a level of protection because the mother just needs to give birth. But we, the birth team, have to do everything else, cover all the logistics to ensure that her birth is as safe as it can be. So she might not be or feel that she's in any threat, any level of threat, right? But not that she isn't, but we have to make sure that our standard operating procedures, everything is followed to ensure that her birth is as safe as possible. And that to me is still a sense of protection.
So define safety and specifically in birth. So for her to give birth and to give so, let's say, effortlessly and experience it in flow, safety would be important, right?
Safety is important, but it's a bit like the language of love, right? Everyone's language for safety is different, yet the same. So the same in the sense where like safety is universal, in the sense where we try to, and you can go through like Maslow's theory of safety, right? The first level is safety, which is you have to have your food, you got to have shelter and things like that. So to a certain degree, it is universal that everyone just wants to be able to feel safe to unwind, right? But the level of safety or the degree of safety would be dependent on her childhood experiences, the emotional baggage that she brings to the birth. So we have basic safety where if you look at research that has been done on birth territory or what makes it safe for women. So when we talk about what needs to happen for labor to progress, in obstetric and midwifery text is labeled as 3Ps, 4Ps, or 5Ps, right? So 4Ps is very acceptable, where you have P for power for contractions, your P for the pelvis, your P for passenger, which is the baby. This is your 3 basic Ps. Then you have your 4th P, which is psyche. It is now recognized, not worldwide, but in more developed countries, that P for psyche is a very important component for giving birth. So having attended births in Singapore and America and in China, right? I can say in a place like China, when I was in a tier 2 city, P for psyche did not exist. But women still managed to give birth because it wasn't a birthright to have safety as one of the prerequisites. Their level of safety compared to what women actually wanted was the difference between night and day. But still, women are able to give birth, probably with a lot more interventions. And it depends on what they view psyche as. When you're in a more developed country or an in-between, like where we are at in Singapore, where it's not truly developed socially, but yet it's still somewhat developed, then the level of safety is really skewed. I feel like we're in between China and in between more advanced countries like Europe, Australia, and America, socially advanced, right? Where our level of human rights are not as advanced in countries like these. So when you go to other countries, it's like, wow, safety is not just from a personal level, safety is environmental. And they have done a lot of pretty good studies to show how environmental safety contributes to psyche in terms of safety in psyche. Simple things like dim lighting, that making sure that there are curtains covering the door into the birthing suite so women don't feel that someone is coming in or sense that someone is coming in, making sure that she has a labor playground available to her. And there's pretty good research to show that what needs to actually happen to contribute to emotional psyche. But again, you know, if you compare it to a woman who is from China, she won't know the difference between not feeling safe with white lights, bright lighting, and however she's treated in the birthing suites, where in a lot of places, men or birth partners are still not allowed in the birthing suites. They're only allowed with them in labor. And she doesn't know any difference because socially she's not advanced to that point, right? In a place like Singapore, most people still think giving birth, you're lying on your back with your legs up.
Mhm.
No matter how socially advanced we are, we're not, but no matter how we're perceived to be a very advanced country in terms of technology, but we're not socially advanced to the point where women are demanding like, well, if I'm gonna have a dumb sitting and not lying on my back, I'm gonna be sitting or in an upright position when I'm having my baby. So safety is really relative that way.
Okay.
On one hand, it's measurable, but on the other hand, it's what you're exposed to, what you're used to.
So when it comes to the birth experience,
Mm-hmm.
if I look at as a complete layman with no clue,
Mm-hmm.
and I say, we once upon a time gave birth without hospitals in the bush, in Cairns, the Aboriginal, the birthing pools they had, so like natural. In what ways have we gone backwards? And in what ways have we gone forwards when it comes to birth?
I think when it comes to birth, certain ways that we've gone forward is hygiene, right? But the level of hygiene taken to what extent?
Yeah.
So if you look at what's happening with COVID-19 and women having to wear a face shield, even if she's tested positive in an operating theater or when she's giving birth, then there's a little bit extreme. And so in terms of, there's a lot of like, even though I'm an student midwife and I'm in a setting where I work with obstetricians, so I'm in an in-between setting, right, where I have a strong faith and belief in midwifery care, but I'm also exposed to obstetric care. I feel that the best care is an in-between, where you have some level of obstetric care through the pregnancy with ultrasounds, etc. And most of the care in a low-risk pregnancy that doesn't require doctors, then they can be cared for with the midwife. Something that is quite common in places like the UK. You don't actually see an obstetrician unless there's a problem in your pregnancy. Then you see a specialist for that. I think that's quite a healthy way of managing pregnancy, and not really one way where it's pure midwifery care. Having been exposed to that, to traditional midwifery, where I did my apprentice midwifery with the Amish community, like you could see that certain things could have been avoided if they had some level of obstetric care. Not all, just some. Certain things could have been quite easily avoided, right? So to a certain degree, the advancement it is helpful. Of course, it has saved more lives, saved more babies, a lot more prevention, etc. But there's also a need to go back to basics. And a lot of things in life we're going back to basics anyway. So it feels as if one thing is taken to a certain extreme, and we haven't really found the balance in between. And you'll see that, like, what do we expect post-COVID-19? It is said that, we're going to find a new balance. But the challenge is the new balance going to be a good reset for mothers and babies and their families? Or is the new reset going to be quite extreme and push us in a more extreme environment where women during labor are expected to wear a face mask or expected to wear a plastic face shield?
So going backwards when it comes to safety, as far as okay.
So, I mean, the thing is, it can go in many extremes. That's what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah.
So it can go into the extreme of like, it has to be super hygienic. And the problem being super hygienic is that you don't expose the babies to the bacteria that they need to build their immunity. So there is a downfall to that as well. So who knows where this is going to take us, where the new balance is actually going to be. In an ideal situation, this whole reset will take us a few steps backwards, where we tend to trust more our natural instincts, trust our bodies again, rather than have to trust equipment to actually know our bodies. So in an ideal situation, it will bring us back to that reset. But from the way things are going, it really depends.
So we've honed in on women, and if we talk about babies themselves, so I was fascinated when I watched a documentary and it showed how once upon a time we'd give injections, whatever it was, when the baby was first born, and baby cried and we thought nothing of it. But now we've later understood that babies can actually feel and experience. What about all of that affects the child coming into the world, and how does it affect them?
There are good enough studies to show that what a baby experiences during pregnancy, what the baby experiences during the birth and in their early years would have an impact on how they're brought in, or would have an impact on the person that they're going to become. So this is also part of the birthing movement, right? Where we're going back to protecting birth, not just for the mother, but also for the baby. So there is good enough evidence, and in a lot of the birthing world, we are advocating a gentle birth. Whilst we recognize that birth trauma cannot be avoided, where even if the mother has the best birth experience, the baby will still go through some form of birth trauma. But birth trauma, in terms of stress for the baby, may not necessarily be a bad thing. Just as the baby needs to breathe, there has to be a certain stress. If you look at health right now, right, whether you talk about intermittent fasting, whether you talk about certain food choices or how exercise should be done to be effective, there's always that emphasis on good stress. Not all stress is necessarily bad. In the same way, when babies are being born, there's a certain level of stress, but that level of stress is meant to help them cope with the outside world. So it's finding the balance, like exercise and like intermittent fasting with food, finding the balance where you push it enough to activate your body to the point where it performs more effectively, but you don't push it to the point of fatigue or damage to the body. And birth is the same that way.
Awesome. This is fascinating. So if you look at birth and we talk about advancements, and you talk just now about a birth movement, define what that is. Define what is the birth movement today? Where are we at in regards to
the birth movement really is about giving back to a mother what she truly wants, right? And what's innate to her. So, which brings us to the next question: what is actually innate to mothers? Nobody gets pregnant and wakes up and goes like, "Ooh, I want to have the most dramatic birth ever," right? Everyone only wants to have a good birth experience, dependent on what they define good as. Some people's good would be at a very basic level, which is a healthy mother and a healthy baby. And then again, you got to define what healthy is, which is relative from one person to another. But in its most purest form, right? Everyone just wants to have a good birth experience. And the question these days is, why is it so bloody difficult just to want to achieve something so basic?
Well, that's what I'm thinking in my mind. Why is that?
Right.
Why is it so difficult?
It's the systems, and then this would be dependent on where people birth, right? It's the systems that are set up. So if I give an example, when people birth with us at the birth sanctuary, I don't need a birth plan. Not like I do at the hospital or whatever. I don't need a birth plan. All I need to know is certain preferences, whether they want delayed cord clamping or they want to store the baby stem cells, what kind of vaccinations they want to give their baby, right? Because these are personal choices that parents have to make. But the rest of it is a given, where we're going to treat you with love and respect. When you come to our facility to birth, we're going to provide you with the laboring playground. You decide following your body, or we may have to step in to give suggestions if needed on certain things you can do to help your labor to progress. But everything is already a given. Like, yes, you might feel like using a birth rope. You might want to have hydrotherapy or have a water birth. You might want to use the birth stool. You might lie down and use a peanut ball. You might want to be on all fours leaning on your birth ball. All that would be a given. So it's just about like, nobody wants to have lack of options. So it's just giving them all the options and just letting their bodies unfold, dim lighting, music, aromatherapy, feeling safe, having enough medical care to ensure that everything is going well, and knowing that there are people in charge to ensure that if things are not going well, they have the expertise, both natural as well as pharmaceutical, to guide the woman and her partner through this process. So most of it are a given, and they don't even have to ask for it. This is the philosophy that we carry at this place. And it's not just about birth, but it's about supporting a mother through that. So in terms of postpartum care, we're up with them for every feed. We're there to help them. Then of course we have mothers, especially the second time or more mothers, right, where they feel very in touch with their motherly instincts. They feel, not all of them, but some of them will feel very confident. And they just feel like, oh, if I want support, I know it's within arm's reach. But everything is there. The philosophy is there to cater for them, to keep them safe. They don't even need to explain themselves why they want things in a certain way. Whereas with most birth environments, you still have a lot of explaining to do through the birth plan, through saying that this is what I want, etc. So it's almost like people don't truly understand what women want. And women themselves, to be fair, don't usually understand what they want either, because of the lack of education and support, and what is now mainstream is so far from what women were used to.
So let's say you got a magic wand,
Mm-hmm.
and we talk about the birth movement, because my assumption, tell me if I'm wrong, but the assumption is that the birth movement will bring us to a place of, I guess, where there's that appreciation for birth for each individual, or however it looks, not perfection, that's not the word. But if you had a magic wand to move this birth movement forward, what would you do?
I think I will start with peace from within.
Okay.
Because the thing is, if you're talking about birth not going the way people are wanting, right? So the opposite of safety at birth is violence at birth. And which means to say, if you want peace at birth, peace has to start from within. If you don't have that violent streak in you, and we're all a mix of yin and yang, so we have the potential for both, right? So the thing is, if you are so at peace with yourself, it's very hard to do harm to others. And when I say do harm right, is right intent may not be followed by right action. So you may do something for mother thinking that you're helping her, when you're actually causing her more distress.
Give me an example of that.
Than help. So let's say like well-meaning family members who are wanting to encourage the mothers to breastfeed. And then they may say things like, I think breastfeeding is really good, but your baby's crying all the time. Could your baby be hungry? Could you not be producing enough milk? So it's well intent that they're worried about the baby, but they're not supporting the mother who's doing her best to try to breastfeed in a way that's helpful for the mother. Because the mother might feel like, yeah, I'm the one who's providing the food, and now everyone's doubting my ability to feed, rather than going in, let's check on what's happening with milk supply. Is the crying truly because of milk supply, or is the crying something else? Maybe the baby needs a burp. Maybe the baby just needs to eliminate. Maybe the baby just needs to be parented and rocked to sleep. What is the baby actually needing? So right intent is usually not necessarily followed by right action. So when we talk about peace, right, peace from within comes from the intent. But you see, if you're dealing with yourself, all you deal with is yourself, right? You're answerable to yourself and accountable to yourself. But the moment you're dealing with someone else, it's very different, because you need to understand their level of safety. You need to understand their love language. You need to understand, so you may come with a right intent. The right intent of my mother trying to feed me all the time. That's an Asian's way of showing love, right? But I may not want to eat so much food as much as she gives. So in the same way, in order for this channel to exist, the other needs to understand what is the other wanting. And often when you have peace at birth, you're also talking about peace from within. You're talking about opening, peaceful enough to open that communication channel with the right intent to follow right action, so that then when you're communicating, whether it's a team, a group of people, just a one-on-one, then we're all on the same level. Then you're really talking about a peaceful communication, a peaceful channel that is actually coming through, right? So I feel the first step is always peace from within, right? And peace from within can be as simple as just being at peace, can be as difficult as being wholesome enough to feel at peace. And you get a lot of like birth professionals coming in, right, called to this line to help women. When you help people, you get a lot of significance out of it. So it's that, are they doing this because it makes them feel good that they're helping someone else? Or is it bigger than that, where they're doing this because they are genuinely interested in helping society? So it could be on an individual level, but it could be on a big level. And that affects the motivations of the person being there.
So how does that then, if you think of it, it's not an altruistic view of support. If somebody has a motivation with good intent, how is that affecting birth? I'm trying to understand how that all affects things in a bad way.
So you could have a birth supporter wanting the mother to have a drug-free birth, right? But the mother may not necessarily want a drug-free birth. Or she may, but the birth has taken a turn to the point where she seems to want to change her mind because it's getting unbearable for her.
Right.
So in the way that the birth supporter, in the way she communicates with her, it will affect the way she communicates with her. If the agenda for the birth supporter is such that, like all the mothers I've supported managed to have a drug-free birth.
Got it.
Right? And she wants to keep it that way, then the way she counsels or supports the woman may actually change.
Right.
To one that feeds her agenda, but it's not one where it's for the woman.
So the agenda is not pure, therefore it's shaping the outcome.
Correct.
To the understand.
Correct.
Okay.
And even it may or not shape the outcome, but before we can even get to the outcome, it's the choices that are actually offered to women. So it's, and the problem sometimes with violence at birth is everyone has their agenda.
Right.
And the agenda is not one that is for the mother, in the well-being of the mother. And that's usually the problem with births or violence at births.
And violence is a really strong word, but you use that intentionally. Define violence at birth. Violence at birth would be...
Some people don't even realize they're being violated. That's the
Right.
saddest part, right? I've been to births where the doctors will say to the women and go like, oh, your perineum is not stretchy enough. You'll do so much better with an episiotomy. When she's pushing after hours and hours of being in labor.
So defeating.
It could be as simple as that, right? And I personally see it as verbal abuse.
Yeah.
This is not what this woman is needing. She's needing your love and encouragement. Who cares if you have attended so many births and you're sick and tired of seeing perineum stretch or not stretch, right? This is not what the mother is needing. She's needing encouragement to show her that she can do it. So I personally feel there's a lot of violence. I remember attending my first cesarean. This was years ago, early in my career, right? And I was shocked seeing the woman treated like a piece of meat in the market. And I'm like, we can get the same outcome of moving the woman from here to there and getting her to do here to this with just a little bit more words, explaining to her what needs to be done. It's just not humane. And just very little things, right? Professionals coming up to women going, you don't know how to push. You're not pushing correctly. Right? It's you can see it as, well, she's so mean, but you know what? It's a form of violence. Call it what it is. It's a form of violence. So,
which stems from hierarchy? What does it stem from?
I think it stems from the lack of peace from within.
Okay. So that peace is not just from within the mother to be, the peace is within the supporters. Yeah, okay.
Everybody, everyone who comes to you can have a mother who is not at peace with herself, right? But it's going to play out during labor, it will show up. Right. But the thing is, just because if you have someone who's nasty, whether it's a mother or another provider, then if it triggers something in you, you get nasty as well. Right? But if you're so peaceful and so sure of yourself, you won't buy into that game and get triggered.
Yeah.
So it's how you choose to hold a space for each other. And like, you know, you still achieve the same outcome if a mother needs to do something during labor, medical intervention, or whatever it is. But how you get the means to an end is the thing that makes the difference, right? It's the language that's used, the intent, the compassion and kindness that is being shown to the mother in labor.
So finish my sentence. Peace starts. How do you finish that? Peace starts
from within.
From within. And from within, if you were going to start this, I mean, it's not that you're going to start, it has started and it's continuing to evolve. We look at a birth movement. Where does that peace need to first come from?
You see, the birth movement, right, is there because it's giving women back what they are wanting. And this is what we call a birthright.
Right.
That all of us have birthrights, but we don't even know it because it's lost. And that, I feel, is very different from peace from within. I'm not sure that there are many birth activists out there who are actually peaceful within themselves. They're doing things for what they think is towards the birth movement, but probably still have a lot of angst and issues amongst themselves.
Which is intent and agenda again.
Yeah,
right?
and again, this is something where everyone has to work through. Right? And everyone has a different level of emotional baggage that they have to work through, kind of thing. So even though the birth movement is there in an ideal situation, it starts with peace from within. I think that's a very honestly, I think that's a very difficult thing to achieve. What I think is definitely doable is to, as a birth professional, to embark on a journey of self-discovery and awareness. We're not striving for perfection, just as there are no perfect births. But if we supporting these mothers, right, and humans and welcoming babies in a certain world, if we are committed to a life of growing, personal growth and healing and everything, that's the best we can do. Having that awareness to grow from within, to contribute to peace on earth and peace at birth.
Here's something as you're saying that I'm thinking about. I've heard the term that people heal from their birth. Does that happen for birth professionals?
Oh, for sure.
Help me understand. I'm just imagining how you can't not be affected when you're attending these births and you're seeing the things and you're playing the role that you do. I don't think there's any career like it when it comes to bringing life into the world. So how would someone, you know, if they're doing all this work on themselves, but they also seeing births and they're a part of it, how do people heal from birth?
As a
professional,
I truly believe that you attract the birth experiences that you are needing. And this is also why when I'm training doulas, I truly believe that it is very, very important to work on your personal growth. Because if you have someone who's at a very superficial level, she's only able to support the other at a very superficial level. And the only people that will go to these kind of doulas are the people who meet them at their level. Because the people who are further in their level, they'll see through these people and they'll know that it won't be the right fit. So it's something where we attract the experiences that we are needing and wanting very unconsciously. And our bodies are designed to heal. And we are continuously attracting lessons in our life to heal until we learn from the lesson. Then we get the next bigger lesson that we need to unfold and learn, right? So in the same way, yes, healing can occur, but, you know, just as it doesn't have to be at birth, just as with the life experiences that we attract, if you don't learn from it, you'll keep attracting the same thing. So to me, you know, your external world is a reflection of your internal world. So if you're not happy with something that's happening externally, then you have to look internally on what needs to shift in order for the external world to shift.
Yeah, I love that. So as a reflection then, if you look at your entire career, what has birth taught you about life? If you look at all the births you've attended, everything, was the biggest lesson that birth has taught you about life? Your own birth and also the...
It's really life and death. In the sense where, you know, I think the part of birth that really gets me is both life and both death, especially death. And that's where, you know, when you have parents worrying and everything, or having seen so much, not just from my career being at births for the past 17 years, but my own personal life, where I think I've experienced quite a lot more than most people in my own upbringing and what I've experienced, trauma and all that kind of stuff. It feels like, you know, you don't sweat the small stuff. Sometimes I still do. When I get very egoistic, I still do. I'm only human. But you tend to really choose your battles, the battles that you want to fight. And things that you really want to make time for. And there's some things I don't want to make time for, but they just come my way. Don't know why I attract them. But, you know, you just deal with it, but they don't take up that much energy, or you don't want to give it that much energy. Kind of thing, because it's just not worth crying for, sweating for, kind of thing.
So 2 questions. One piece of advice you'd give for mothers, expectant mothers, maybe it's their first, and one piece of advice you would give to birth professionals coming into the birthing movement. You know, they're just starting out in a career. What would the one piece of advice you give? Maybe it's separate, maybe it's the same, but what's the one piece of advice?
For mothers, I would say believe in yourself. Like, if that's that desire, follow your heart's desire. And I say that I meet new mothers all the time, right? And then they come, they're like, yeah, I want to try for natural birth if I can. And if I cannot, then I'll have drugs. The fact that they want to try is a desire. The fact that they doubt their ability to try is because of the noise that gets into the way. So I work on that desire, and I put wood to the fire of that desire, where I become all of a sudden that very few people who actually go, you can. You just have to believe you can. And I'm going to show you the tools and skills necessary to believe that you can. So I would say believe in oneself and follow that desire. Okay, that's 2 things, but to me, it's the same thing. When it comes to birth professionals, is really, I was going to say awareness, having that self-awareness, but I think if I would phrase it up with or sum it up as a sentence, pure intent followed by right action, which is a very Buddhist thing, right? And in order to follow that, you definitely need self-awareness, you definitely need growth. So I would go with pure intent followed by right action.
Wonderful. And knowing so much about life, seeing life come into the world, what's the meaning of life? What's the definition? How do you define life from what you've seen with babies coming into the world, seeing the ultimate form of expression of creation?
It's
why are we here?
Why are we here? To me, it's not birth related or not. I don't see it that way. I definitely feel that we are called to living in this world to fulfill our sacred contract. And our journey is to find out what our sacred contract is. And the sacred contract is really living out your potential or your life's purpose. So I feel like we're called onto this earth to give our soul, a human being, to have that opportunity to live our life purpose, right? And part of that journey is finding out what that actually is, and experience, going through the experiences that actually brings us to discovering what that actually is. And if we talk about purpose, then purpose is always beyond oneself. What is the gifts that we have within ourselves that we can offer to the rest of the world? So it's really being called into this vehicle, a human being, to live out that calling and discover what your gift actually is that you can share with the rest of the world. And that's what I truly feel why we are human, or why we're born into this world for. Because some of us are called to fulfill simple gifts. And it's not a judge of simple, right? Simple in the sense where the gift is just to be around for this family and nothing beyond this family. Some of us are called in this lifetime to fulfill bigger things, where it is beyond the family. It could be beyond a nation. It could be global, right? And it's not for us to determine whether it's just one family, and one family, it doesn't make it less meaningless than an entire nation or a world kind of thing, or whatever that's more to it. But it's that journey to fulfilling that gift.
Mm. Last question on that too. I didn't plan on asking this, but because you just said it,
You have so many last questions. You're cheating.
This is the last one. You talk about calling, and for some people, sometimes it's a frustrating part because they feel the calling, but the fear to take the step. You're someone that has been able to follow that calling, and and here you are all these years later, having followed that step. There's somebody listening that knows innately, intuitively, God, universe, whatever it is calling them to something. What is that advice you give?
The calling is not a destination. I think the problem is a lot of people look to land in somewhere, right? Like what I've discovered from my own journey, very fortunately, to be able to discover my calling at a very young age, in my early 20s, with the birth of our son, and now that I'm in my early 40s, so that's like 20 years later, it's not a destination. It's something where I always say, like, lead with your heart, navigate with your head. And it's where when you open one door, you're going to have 5 to 10 doors. And then you make a choice, which is the next door you're going to go and open. And there's no good or bad choice. It's just that every choice has a consequence that can be good and can be not so good for you in that moment, or doesn't feel good, or is necessary to get to the next door, right? So it's people always looking like, I haven't arrived yet. Where is that place? There is no that place. It's just one door that leads to the next door, that leads to the next door. So it's almost like finding that compass and that light. Like that light leads you, like this morning I was running at MacRitchie, right? And a reservoir, and it's a trail run. And towards the end of the run, I said, how beautiful this is. Even though there's only one path, but the path looks endless. And most of the time we want to see the end of it. But I was running and enjoying that moment of like, wow, it feels as if, even though I know where the end is, it feels as if I'm lost in time. And I'm just following the path kind of thing, So it's that sense of really listening to yourself, that sense of knowing. And a lot of it is intuitive, is really that balance between the head and the heart.
So trusting you're following the path.
I don't know if trust is the right word. It's as if the path is already there.
Got it.
And how many times does the universe have to knock on your door to tell you, hello, I'm here waiting for you, right?
Yeah.
But so I don't feel like trust is the word, but it's already that knowing that's there. The question is, are you listening?
Yeah, perfect.
Right? Which part of you have to get out of your own way to get there, and which part of you have to keep. And with all the experiences I have, with discovering my calling, it's always like, which voice was louder, the heart or the head? And it's allowing the heart to be louder, and then navigating, right, shit, what am I going to do in that situation, and how am I going to navigate that situation, and finding, using my head to navigate around my heart's content.
That's the last question, I assure you. So speaking of giving birth, we've just given birth to the very first podcast of the
Yay!
Birth Lounge. Thank you so much for listening in. Maybe you have a story, as a birth professional, as a mother to be. I want to hear that story. I want to learn from you. I want to discover the secrets to life through birth. And, I think today we've uncovered some really cool stuff. So thank you so much for listening in. Bye-bye.